there. But Dave, thanks so much for having me on here, and great to see so many familiar faces and new faces as well. Seems like yesterday I was at the uh, Movement Maker or out in January, but great to be here and heard a lot today about loss and leadership and positivity. I'm going to share my my story of how I got to where I am today, a little bit more talking about my loss and as far as some things to help entrepreneurs and business owners. So it's going to be a little bit of mix of both, but what I'm going to start with is, many people say that you ask yourself a few questions, right? So what identity am I living in that does not fit the life I'm trying to build? So number one, what am I avoiding because I'm afraid of what it may cost me? And then three, what would change if I trusted what I already knew? So I think those are three good questions to kind of take a look at and see. But as I get into this, as I get into the new year, I can't believe we're already middle of February, halfway through the first quarter, moving forward. But everyone has a word or something that they're trying to do for. I guess you can kind of say almost still the new year. We're in the very early part of it. But my word this year seems to be clarity. So having clarity is promoting success, having a clear vision of what you want to do, who you want to help, who you want to service, and how many people have not found that yet. I mean, I'm sharing this event with many entrepreneurs who have that clarity and have that vision and have those goals that they want to accomplish. But there's many out there that do not in the individual field and in the business field. So I'm very passionate about who I want to help and how I go about doing things. But one of the things that we do, the owner of my business, is Booming Business Solutions. I'm a business coach, if I didn't say that already. But we focus on profit acceleration. So, which means we want to get those net profit margins higher. We want to, revenue is important, but revenue feeds your ego, profit feeds your family. So we really like to, focus on the profit side of it. But let me start by saying a couple of things. Many business owners aren't failing; they are reacting, and reaction is expensive, as we can all imagine. We normalize it; we call it chaos or the grind, as they so, and it's justified. And we confuse motion with momentum. But I'm here to tell you that chaos does have a cost. And one of the most recent surveys that we did, and I fact checked myself on this, is 48 to 50% of businesses fail within the first 5 years. First 5 years, 20 to 25 in the first year, and then 60 to 65 in 10. Those are real numbers, a little scary, a lot scary, but there's a reason for that. And I'll get into that later. But my personal, I have four pillars that I like to live in. Okay. I have a routine that I do. I like to say I'm pretty disciplined. And through my life, where I am today has taught me how to do that. Motivation goes away. It's great to start like all the New Year's resolutions. How many people are still doing them? Are they not? Have they stopped? But motivation is what goes away, but discipline is what really helps you get to the grind and keeps you moving. But I like to live in four pillars, and that's faith, family, fitness, and then finance. I believe living in all four of those buckets lead to a pretty good life. So for me, wherever you believe in something larger than yourself, for me, it's Jesus. For other people, it might be something else, but there's always something bigger than you. Family, vitally important to me. I think everybody in this call sees that. I think we're all close to our families or would like to be. Fitness has always been a part of my journey. Just I feel if you have a strong body leads to a strong mind. We only have one, right? So we got to take care of what God gave us. And I think with doing that, it just helps us succeed at a different level. And then finance, making sure that everything's running correctly in those other buckets that will spill over into that bucket, right? So I believe you can have a really, really good life by living in each of those pillars. And that is my take on that. But my story is how I got to where I am today. It's pretty unique. So when I was up in Massachusetts, um, I was in law enforcement. Started at a young age. I was a police officer for several years, and then I transitioned into the Department of Corrections. So I was a correctional officer in the Massachusetts Department of Corrections. Uh, Pretty cool. I was pretty young. I'd always wanted to be a police officer growing up, and I accomplished that at a young age. Um, did that for a few years. It's a pretty good police work. Learned a lot, did a lot. And at 20, early 20s, you're like, man, this is great, right? Full of energy. Nothing can hurt you. You're invincible at that age. So I did that, like I said, for a few years, and then I transferred to the Massachusetts Department of Corrections, which is a state, job. They paid well, great benefits, but the caveat for that was to take my time that I served there and transfer into the state police because at the time to get to the Massachusetts State Police was very difficult. If you ever saw, The Departed, that movie, Massachusetts State Police, that was a bad side of it. But again, it's a very elite squad to get into, and that was my goal. So I went over the Department of Corrections, and I did that for a period of time, a couple of years, and I was quickly promoted into IPS, inner perimeter security, which was a pretty cool job. There was nine of us on the team that we worked directly with the superintendent, the director of security. We had informants, searches, monitored visitors, all the stuff that was going on within the prison. I ran a cell block prior to that, and this was a maximum security prison. The only one I say was a supermax. They had just opened it up, so it was rusty, no systems, a lot of chaos. But they needed the prison. They moved a lot of the high risk inmates into that prison from Walpole, and then they just combined a bunch of inmates that really shouldn't have been together in that without proper classification. So, anyways, I was young. I had, my wife at the time. We were expecting a daughter, and I took a family leave act up there. So I think it was, 6 weeks off or something like that, 8 weeks off. But anyways, was going back to work, and I was scheduled 7 to 3, Monday through Friday. So it was a pretty good job. Got back. Again, my daughter was 6 weeks old or whatever it was, and I did a shift change for one of the officers over there. He's like, he worked 1 to 9. He's like, hey, can you do a shift swap for me? I said, sure, no problem. I can handle that. He has stuff to do. So during that shift swap, I went in there, and you got to picture this. It's again, super maximum security, worst of the worst inmates that you could possibly have. Nothing to lose, right? They're in there, most of them for life. So there's about 210 plus inmates in the chow hall and 12 correction officers, slightly outnumbered there. But again, in the prison, 80% boredom, 20%, I'd even say 85% boredom, 15%, short terror when shit hits the roof, shit hits the fan, right? Um, so anyways, it was that night the superintendent happened to be in the prison and working, and he happened to be in the chow hall, which was very unique and not didn't usually happen. And I was standing next to him at the front. So the doors in the back, inmates come up, cross the lines, get their food, and they go back and sit at their tables. So I said to the superintendent, it's pretty quiet in here tonight. Usually, it's not super loud, but it's usually it's talking, but it was eerily quiet that night. They're having pasta, garlic bread, regular meal. Remember very vividly. And, after I said that, it was pretty quiet to me. He's like, yeah, within a couple of minutes, I heard chaos going off on the right side. So I saw an inmate jump over the serving line and start attacking a correction officer. And then I heard to my left, another one getting attacked, and then another. I quickly realized this was not a regular inmate on inmate fight. This was an assault on staff, and we were vastly outnumbered. Now, when you're in the Department of Corrections, you sign a little piece of paper that says when you get there that, hey, if stuff goes down, it is what it is. There's rules. There's code 1, code 2, code 3. This quickly escalated to a code 3, which is complete lockdown. And by no means, it's isolate and contain. That was their system, isolate and contain. So what that means is until they get the SWAT team in, the tactical team, you don't open the doors, you do nothing. So as everything's going down, the officers are getting assaulted. Lieutenant came in and a sergeant rushed the super to he's the main guy. He's a head honcho in the prison. Got him to the door. They got him out, and the inmates really didn't mess with him because he is the super. And if they would have touched him, that would have been it. So as it's all going down, I saw one officer being drugged under the table. I ran to go help him, pulled him up from under the table. And then there was one officer named Jason Dennehy, my brother from another mother. He uh he ran in when everybody else ran out. So, he's a squared away guy, Marine, boxer, like you look at him and say, that is a cop, a Marine, whatever it is. So he came in and tried to help us. And unfortunately, you know, it didn't work out well. So he was, as we were trying to fight our way, he was getting his head, caved in, kicked by 4 or 5 inmates. I was able to help him get to his feet. We all then stabilized and fought our way to the door. Inmates were hitting us. I remember the spaghetti incident because we were wearing it. They were taking our handcuffs, our radios. That's all you get, nothing else. And they were trying to, cuff us to the railings to try to get us. And God knows, at that point, my life was over. I'm like, this is it. It's fight or flight. If we don't get out of here, we're freaking dead. And by the grace of God, the superintendent was there on the outside of those doors. We managed to fight our way all the way down. And he said, open those freaking doors. So he opened the doors, and the other officers we were playing tug of war. The inmates were trying to pull us in, and the SEALs were trying to pull us out. So we got out. Thank God. So after I was up in the HSU, which is the hospital unit, we were all getting checked out. I was fortunate. I got, broken nose, bumps and bruises, muscle contusions. My friend Jason got an inch and a half skull fracture, lost vision in his left eye. One of the COs got their ear bit off. It was as brutal as you could see. And I was up there, and I'm like, wait a minute, is this how I'm going to live the rest of my life? Now, keep in mind, I have a young baby at home and a young wife, and her getting the call from the heads of the prison, hey, he's going to the hospital, he's okay. Pretty scary. So at that point, now I could have had any job I wanted at that point because it was I was getting a lot of calls. I won a couple of awards, all cool stuff, but that's not the life I wanted. So I decided to leave, and then I had the entrepreneurial bug hit me. So I said, you know what? I knew a couple of guys who started a landscaping company. Why not? And I just want to get back to that. My friend Jason Dennehy, my brother from another mother, ended up taking his own life last year after brain problems, and just I was able to get him into rehab down here in Florida because that's where I live now. He was doing okay. Called me a couple of weeks later, Kev. He was from the gym. He's like, hey, I'm getting back into it. Things are good. And I got a call from his mom saying Jason's gone. So that was the last time I talked to him. But again, you form a brotherhood like that when you go through something like that. And probably people on here can relate. Um, but anyways, that's where I started doing landscape. I joined the landscaping company. Jason and I remained very close friends for years until that tragic event happened last Christmas time. So again, I figured, I'm going to start a landscaping company. How hard can it be? Now, keep in mind, back then we didn't have all this information out there, all these the gurus out there, or systems or information that we had access to. You lived in a small town. You asked the guy who owned a landscaping company or the Chamber of Commerce or somebody in the area that could help you out. Using Word documents, Excel spreadsheets, no systems, nothing in place, using door hangers, classifieds. If anybody remembers the yellow pages, that's how you advertised back in the day. So just to give you a little idea. But I did okay. I was getting some throwaway accounts from the landscapers that didn't want, doing some door hangers, knock-in, advertising locally, and I built a pretty good business. Payroll, had some stuff that a typical business owner has. So did okay with that. But we always had a passion to move move down to Florida. So I ended up going there. I then started doing C2C business, so life insurance, mortgages before everything went bust for that. So I saw the writing on the wall clearly for that, and I ended up going into HR, payroll. I got my insurance licenses, so my health and benefits, workers' comp, PNC, all that stuff. So I worked with thousands of businesses over the years, and they all had the same thing in common: the small to mid-sized business. No systems, chaos, wearing all the hats, working 17 hours a day, just constantly stressed. And we all started a business not for that. We don't want to buy a job. We want time, money, and freedom. At least I do, right? At least I do. And I can probably bet most of us listening here do as well. So I said, there's got to be something more. So then I ended up, uh, you know, I saw an ad that hit me pretty hard. They did all the right things. They knew who they were talking to, their specific audience. They dialed it in and they attacked it. And they used something called the conversion equation, which they interrupted me, educated, interrupted, engaged, educated, and they hit me with a compelling offer. Had a couple of calls. I'm like, wow, this is exactly what I was looking for. Found me out of the blue. Guy lived in Tennessee. No idea, right? Changed my world. So then I was able to get this. It's called, a profit acceleration software, and it was pretty unique. Where most things are very high level and surface. This is dialed into the exact business based on where they are, their numbers are today, where they want to go. I always tell people numbers lie, people don't. I'm sorry, other way around. People lie, numbers don't. Right. So with that being said, this is, created a 17-page roadmap based on where they were today, what they were doing, and gave them a clear clarity on how to get there, step by step, and what we need to implement first. So I thought that was pretty cool. And the core truth behind a lot of it is many business owners, there's a big difference. I think we all could agree between marketing and advertising, totally different. But again, having that conversion equation is very, very vital. But a lot of businesses, they don't have framework, they don't have systems, they don't have positioning, and then the businesses collapse, unfortunately. Good businesses, which is what the statistics I gave you earlier in our conversation. So what happens when you don't have that? What do people do? Discount, discount, discount. Not because they're feeling generous, but out of fear. Because fear feels safe. It is not a strategy, and that you're in survival mode at that point. So building structure isn't sexy, right? It's not easy. Calm, but they calm chaos. They clean up everything nicely. Standard operating procedures. Decisions they're not boarding. They have leads close, and they deliver. And what's the most important thing? They retain your clients. Everybody think they got to spend all kinds of money going on Google and all that stuff to get new clients when they're not getting the maximum value for the clients they already have. So again, the truth is the business doesn't always need new leads. There's literally $7,500,000 hiding within a business that profit leaks. People, they don't see it where that money's leaking, but it's already there. But that's, work with what you got first, and then seek outside. The transformation, we try to get people to go from working, and you've all heard it before, I'm sure, from working in the business to working on the business. Now, when you're getting started, of course, you're wearing all the hats, but you need to delegate as you grow. You think once you hit 500,000, you think you're gonna have more problems than $1 million in revenue or less? You're gonna have more compliance, HR, insurances, all this stuff. Make sure you're covered properly. Liability, key employee. There's all kinds of different stuff that we just kind of help take those blinders off. And people need that. I have a coach because God knows I have blind spots, right? So again, delegation, it's not risky, but it is required. Don't delegate the chaos, delegate the clarity. It comes from structure. Create leaders within the team if you have one. There's a difference, again, between leading and manager. So really creating those leaders. And, I don't know about you, but I want to sell the business someday. Most of us do. And I get to decide, do I want to sell it for a 2 to 3% multiplier or 7 to 9% multiplier? But again, when an investor comes in, they don't want to see a business owner working 15 hours a day. They want somebody they can walk in, turnkey, they can leave for a few weeks, and the business is still generating revenue for them. So, but that's why I coach. I've lived it. I've lived both sides of the equation. I've done a lot, and I've learned a lot. I've learned what to do and definitely what not to do. And I'm learning every day. I'm learning by all of us, all of you. So as I'm going to wrap this up, there's two paths, different outcomes. We are working hard. I think we can all agree to that. However, are you building freedom or are you building friction? We got to look back and ask ourselves, is that what we're doing? So the home, you're ready for structure. And, I believe that the more we pour into other people and give and support and help, we get it back tenfold. And that's what makes this group so unique. Everybody in here, when I met Faber and I met David through Faber, everybody I met in that group, I'm the new guy to the group. But everybody I met had been so genuine and so willing to pour into other people and help, and it shows. I see the same people. Why? Because you're taking care of each other, taking care of the clients. But if you ever want to talk, I can drop my link in the chat after. Love to connect with you guys. If I can be of service in any way, helping you guys find some money in the business, whatever, let me know. Completely up to you. But again, David, thanks for letting me be here, and I appreciate the time that you've given me and be able to present to these folks. And it's great meeting all of you virtually, some in person, and whatever else. So again, thanks a lot, guys.
You're very